The ocean has secrets it never gives back. In 1998, a vibrant 23-year-old woman vanished from a cruise ship without a trace. Her name was Amy Lynn Bradley, and what came after still chills investigators today. But the deeper story raises even more questions. Why did her parents start receiving disturbing emails years later? Who was the strange man seen walking with her at dawn? And why did the FBI hit dead ends again and again? Her story never truly ended. Right before we continue, take a brief moment to type "Justice for Amy" in the comments. Her family never stopped searching, and neither should we. In March of 1998, the Bradley family boarded the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas for what should have been a carefree vacation. Amy Lynn Bradley, their 23-year-old daughter, had just graduated from college and was excited to spend quality time with her family before starting a new job. The cruise departed San Juan, Puerto Rico, heading toward the Caribbean, filled with tropical music, cocktails, and laughter. Amy wasn't just another tourist. She was athletic, confident, a strong swimmer, and had even played college basketball. Her brother Brad described her as adventurous, but also grounded, someone who always kept her wits about her. But even early in the cruise, Amy's parents began sensing something off. It wasn't Amy, it was the way certain crew members looked at her. Amy's mother noticed it first. Men were watching her, she later said. Not friendly glances, lingering stares. Something about it didn't sit right. On the night of March 23rd, the family attended a formal dinner on board. Amy wore a beautiful black top and white skirt. She looked radiant. Afterward, she and her brother Brad headed to the ship's disco club to enjoy the music and dance. That was the last night anyone would see Amy safe. Brad recalled that Amy danced with the ship's band members, particularly one man named Yellow, a bass player. The two seemed friendly, but nothing out of the ordinary. At around 3:30 a.m., they returned to the cabin and Brad fell asleep. At that moment, Amy was still alive and still there, but by 6 a.m., she was gone. Her father, Ron Bradley, woke up and noticed Amy's bed was empty. Her sandals were still there, her cigarettes, even her ID. But Amy, nowhere. That morning, as panic set in, the family frantically searched the ship. Amy had not disembarked, nor was she sunbathing. She wasn't in the pool or the restaurants. The crew began a casual search, but nothing intensive. After all, they said, she was an adult. Maybe she had wandered off. But then came a curious report. A passenger claimed to have seen Amy around 6 a.m. walking with a man near an elevator. The man resembled Yellow, the musician from the night before. She didn't look scared, but the timing was disturbing. Why would Amy be walking around with him so early? Why hadn't she told her family? Even stranger, the crew was hesitant to announce her disappearance to other passengers. They didn't want to cause alarm, but every hour mattered. And then came the first in a series of chilling decisions. When Amy's parents insisted something was wrong, the ship's staff hesitated. They claimed protocol prevented them from announcing her disappearance publicly. Even more baffling, they refused to dock or turn back. The Rhapsody of the Seas continued its voyage, leaving behind any chance of an early ground-based search. For 24 hours, Amy's family begged them to seal the ship, to check every room, every nook and deck. Instead, the crew merely checked common areas and moved on with onboard entertainment. It was as if nothing had happened. During this window of silence, any trail Amy might have left was growing colder by the hour. And still, the ship's crew seemed more focused on not disrupting the guest experience than finding a missing woman. By the time Royal Caribbean contacted the authorities, it was already too late for the most crucial first 48 hours. Just days after Amy vanished, a taxi driver in Curaçao came forward. He claimed a woman matching Amy's description had frantically approached his cab, asking for a phone. She seemed scared, desperate, and then two men approached. Suddenly, she went silent. Then they walked away with her. The cabbie didn't report it right away. He assumed it was a lover's quarrel. But once he saw Amy's photo on TV, he recognized her. "I'm sure it was her," he said. But was this real? Could Amy have already been trafficked off the ship to land? Her family, now back in the U.S., clung to every sighting, but without confirmation, it was agony. Then another lead surfaced, this one from inside a brothel. In 1999, a U.S. Navy officer claimed he saw a woman in a Curacao brothel who told him, in English, "My name is Amy Bradley, and I need help." Shocked, the officer said he froze, but when he returned later, the woman was gone. The officer didn't report it for months, fearing consequences for being in a brothel. But when he eventually came forward, the Bradleys were devastated. Could Amy still be alive, forced into a life she never chose? It wasn't the last sighting. Over the years, women matching Amy's appearance were reported in multiple countries. One photo from a Caribbean escort website sparked real hope. It showed a woman with the same tattoos as Amy, but hopes would rise and crash again. In 2005, the Bradleys received an anonymous email with two photos. One showed a woman, alive, but tired, lying on a hotel bed. Her eyes looked hollow. But it was her body that sent a chill down their spines. The tattoos were a match. The Tasmanian devil on her shoulder, the gecko on her stomach. Even the FBI confirmed the woman in the photo resembled Amy. But the trail led nowhere. The photo came from a Caribbean adult website and disappeared before they could trace its origin. Who sent it, and why? Was someone taunting the family? Or was this Amy begging for help in the only way she could? The FBI's renewed efforts soon uncovered something darker beneath the surface. Behind closed doors, the FBI started leaning toward a horrifying theory. Amy had likely been kidnapped into a human trafficking ring. Several pieces pointed in that direction. The sighting in the brothel, the photo from the website, and the deliberate silence from people on board the ship. But they lacked hard proof. And Royal Caribbean, under increasing pressure, remained tight-lipped about their investigation. Some say they were protecting their brand. Others believe someone on board knew more than they let on. What if Amy had been targeted before the cruise? Could someone on that ship have marked her from the very beginning? As the Bradleys pushed for more answers, they hit wall after wall. One person stood out in Amy's final night aboard. Yellow, a member of the cruise band Blue Orchid. Amy was seen dancing with him just hours before she vanished. Photos captured the two smiling together, but when questioned, his answers were vague. Too vague. Witnesses said they saw Yellow giving Amy extra attention that evening. Some felt it was innocent. Others weren't so sure. There were even rumors that he had invited her for drinks later. If Yellow was the last known person to see her, why didn't he come forward more publicly? Why did he leave the ship before giving a full statement? The Bradleys begged investigators to dig deeper. What they found next only made the timeline murkier. One of the most criticized aspects of the case was the delay. When Amy didn't show up for breakfast, her parents knew something was off. But ship security brushed it off. She probably went ashore early, they said. Except Amy had left everything behind, even her shoes. The ship waited hours before initiating any kind of search, and by then, they were already docked in Curacao. If Amy had been taken off the ship, those precious hours were already lost. Why didn't they seal the exits? Why not announce the disappearance to passengers? It almost felt like someone wanted the silence. And when you look closer, the gaps in the timeline become even harder to explain. Amy's case isn't unique. Since the early 1990s, dozens of people have vanished from cruise ships, often without a trace. The ocean swallows secrets, and jurisdiction becomes murky. International waters mean few consequences. Cruise companies often conduct their own internal investigations. In Amy's case, the Bradleys felt shut out. They were given generic updates, no access to full passenger lists, and no clarity on security footage. It left them with more questions than answers. What if cruise lines are hiding more than just poor safety protocols? What if Amy's case was part of something much larger, and one phone call years later would make that possibility feel terrifyingly real? In 2005, a woman named Judy Moorer contacted the Bradleys. She said she'd met a young woman in a Caribbean hotel bathroom. The woman was distraught and scared. She told Judy, "I'm Amy Bradley, please help me." Before Judy could react, two men appeared and pulled her away. The Bradleys were stunned. This wasn't a vague sighting, it was a direct plea. And the details she gave matched Amy's perfectly, right down to her voice. But like every other lead, the trail went cold. Why didn't anyone intervene? Why did she vanish again? Amy seemed to keep reappearing, but all was just out of reach. Royal Caribbean offered the Bradleys a quiet settlement after years of pressure. It was never disclosed publicly, but the family believes the cruise line knows more than they admitted. Several documents about the ship's operations that day have never been released. The FBI also appeared to hit dead ends. While they continued searching, the Bradleys began to lose hope in traditional systems. What if justice would never come from the top? What if their only hope lay in whispers, sightings, and shadows? Still, they refused to stop searching. And then, a private investigator uncovered something truly disturbing. Desperate for answers, the Bradleys hired a seasoned private investigator who specialized in missing person cases across the Caribbean. Unlike official investigators, he was blunt and determined. He uncovered unofficial reports of a woman matching Amy's description being seen on several nearby islands. One informant claimed to have seen her in a brothel in Curaçao, the same island the ship had docked at the morning she vanished. Could Amy really be alive? And if so, why hadn't she escaped? The investigator pushed further, and what he uncovered next was chilling. What if Amy wasn't just missing? What if she was being held? As the investigator explored deeper, a disturbing pattern emerged. Women around Amy's age were vanishing across cruise ports. Most were never found. Some were later spotted in illegal trafficking rings. The investigator believed Amy may have been abducted and forced into this hidden world. Multiple sightings backed the theory in Barbados, Venezuela, even Colombia. The descriptions were eerily accurate. A tattoo of a gecko on her ankle, a Tasmanian devil on her shoulder. Was Amy trapped in a network too powerful for her family or even authorities to touch? And then someone who claimed to have met her stepped forward. A former U.S. Navy officer on shore leave in 1999 walked into a brothel in Barbados. He later told the FBI he was approached by a young woman who whispered, "My name is Amy Bradley. I need help." He was stunned. Before he could act, she was quickly escorted away by two men. The officer didn't report the incident until after returning to the U.S., thinking it might be a cruel coincidence. But once he saw Amy's photo, he was certain. Why would someone impersonate Amy with such precise detail? Or was that really her? The FBI took the tip seriously, but once again when they returned to the area, there was no sign of her. Years passed, and the Bradleys lived in an impossible emotional limbo. They couldn't grieve. There was no body. They couldn't move on. There were too many signs she might be alive. Amy's younger brother, Brad, struggled most with guilt. He had been the last family member to see her. He later said if he had just gotten up earlier that morning, maybe he could have stopped whatever happened. Hope can be a lifeline, but it can also be a slow, unending form of pain. And then in 2005, a blurry photograph surfaced, showing a woman some believed was Amy. The photo came from a website that advertised escort services in the Caribbean. One image showed a woman with deep, haunted eyes and a strong resemblance to Amy. The listing called her Jazz. The FBI analyzed the image, and Amy's parents believed it was her. The eyes, the jawline, the expression were all too familiar. But the lead went nowhere. The site was taken down before authorities could trace it. Was Jazz Amy reaching out in the only way she could? Or had they been misled again? The family needed answers, and that meant returning to the place where it all began. In 2005, Ron and Iva Bradley returned to Curacao, the island where Amy was last confirmed alive. This time, they went not as tourists, but as grieving parents holding on to a shred of hope. They retraced Amy's steps, talked to locals, and showed pictures to anyone who might remember her. Several people claimed to have seen a woman matching her description recently. But when they visited one specific beach bar, a bartender gave a response that stopped them cold. "I haven't seen her lately," he said, "but she used to come in here. Quiet girl, always watched the door." That comment renewed a theory the family had tried to bury, that Amy was being moved, controlled, and possibly watched at all times. Maybe she could have escaped. But what if she had been threatened? There were whispers that women abducted into trafficking networks were often told their families would be harmed if they tried to run. Amy, being fiercely protective, would have stayed silent to keep them safe. But how do you protect someone who's already lost? The Bradleys pressed for help, but ran into a wall no one expected, a jurisdiction nightmare. Even though Amy was a U.S. citizen, she had vanished in international waters and was possibly seen on foreign soil. That meant U.S. law enforcement had very limited power. Interpol had been involved, but leads were often too vague or cold by the time they were reported. Without cooperation from local governments or physical evidence, the case kept hitting dead ends. It wasn't that no one cared, it's that no one could act fast enough. And meanwhile, someone out there may have been watching the Bradleys' every move. In 2008, a Canadian tourist vacationing in Curacao approached the Bradleys. She swore she had spoken to a woman on the beach who said her name was Amy and claimed she was from Virginia. The woman seemed nervous, constantly looking over her shoulder, and said she was not supposed to talk to anyone. When the tourist asked if she needed help, the woman walked away, fast. Could Amy have been living right under the surface, begging for someone to notice? The Bradleys rushed to the location, but once again, the trail had gone cold. That same year, the FBI reopened the case with a new team. They re-interviewed past witnesses, reanalyzed images, and even brought in new digital forensic tools. One retired agent said off the record, "This case never felt like a simple disappearance. It had too many layers, too many red flags." But even with renewed interest and new tools, there was still no body, no confirmed sighting, no proof of life. And then a sealed document surfaced, one that had never been made public. The Bradley family learned through an inside source that a more detailed Royal Caribbean internal report existed, but it had never been made public. It allegedly contained timelines, staff interviews, and surveillance access logs from the morning Amy disappeared. Ron Bradley attempted to access the report through legal means. He was denied. Even a formal Freedom of Information request hit a wall. Why would a cruise line keep these details sealed unless it protected them from liability? And more importantly, what did they know about that early morning when Amy walked away from the lounge? In 2009, a former cruise line security officer came forward, anonymously. He claimed that surveillance footage was viewed privately by higher-ups before being handed over to authorities. He said he was told to stay silent and not raise questions about Amy's departure point. He also claimed that certain camera angles were suddenly corrupted. Did someone tamper with evidence? If this was true, it painted a darker picture. Not just negligence, but a possible cover-up. That same year, a well-known investigative TV show aired a special on Amy's case, bringing it back into the public eye. The Bradleys cooperated, sharing images, timelines, and emotional testimony. Tips poured in, one from someone claiming to have seen Amy in 2000 on a Caribbean island accompanied by two men. She looked scared, but didn't call for help. The TV show's producers passed it to authorities, but like every other lead before, it faded, undocumented, unresolved. and still the questions piled up. Where had Amy gone between 1998 and now? By 2011, over a decade had passed. The Bradleys, now physically and emotionally drained, made a heart-wrenching choice to scale back public appearances. They had hoped the media would bring answers, but now they feared it had brought only more shadows. They kept the tip line active. They still hoped, but they also began speaking in past tense, not about Amy's life, but about their hope, until one final letter arrived. No return address, just 3 words inside: still alive. Help. Was it real, or the cruelest hoax yet? The letter matched Amy's handwriting style, or so claimed a retired graphologist the Bradleys consulted. But without a confirmed origin, it meant nothing legally. It didn't request money. It didn't provide coordinates. It simply existed, almost like a whisper across time, echoing from someone lost or someone pretending. Was this Amy's final call for help? Or just another dead end in a trail littered with misdirection? By 2012, the FBI had largely stepped back from Amy's case. There had been no confirmed sightings, no suspects, no crime scene. Their initial optimism had long faded, replaced by bureaucracy. They called it an open but inactive case. The Bradleys were stunned. They had pinned their last hopes on federal help. Now they were alone again. Why walk away when potential trafficking had not been ruled out? Was this a case the system gave up on, or one someone wanted buried? A former Navy intelligence analyst, now retired, approached the Bradleys privately. He believed Amy could have been taken to a private island, where forced captivity or trafficking would be nearly impossible to detect. His reasoning? Many private Caribbean islands remain off the grid and are beyond easy search jurisdiction. But was this expert insight, or just a theory echoing old fears? Still, the Bradleys quietly funded searches, hoping to find that one break no one else could. In 2016, a shocking tip arrived. A travel agent claimed she had seen a tourist brochure, and in the background of a photo was a woman who resembled Amy. The image was blurry. The setting looked like a beach in Curacao. The woman was walking with 2 other people, not looking at the camera. Could Amy really have been living in plain sight? And if so, was she free or still under control? Back in Virginia, the Bradleys never touched Amy's room. Her favorite posters, photos, and old notebooks remained untouched, like a time capsule. They said keeping the room whole helped them feel closer to her and gave her a place to return if she ever came back. But what happens to hope when the years keep piling up? Is a preserved room a beacon, or a reminder that time has frozen in grief? Over the years, Amy's case has found a home online. Reddit threads, YouTube videos, and podcasts still debate the case. Some call it a cover-up. Others think she escaped and chose to disappear. A few still hold out hope she's alive somewhere, waiting for rescue. Among these voices, one question returns again and again. Why would a vibrant, protective, close-knit young woman vanish without even a whisper goodbye? Experts who reviewed the case suggested Amy's mindset didn't align with voluntary disappearance. She had made plans for that day. She had packed for excursions. She was close with her family. There were no warning signs of emotional distress or intention to run. Dr. Grace Landon, a forensic psychologist, stated, "People who vanish willingly often leave clues, journal entries, digital traces. Amy left nothing. If she didn't leave on her own, then someone else orchestrated her vanishing. But who and why?" Amy's case cast a long shadow over Royal Caribbean and the cruise industry as a whole. Questions were raised about onboard security, missing persons protocol, and crew behavior. In the late 90s, cruise lines weren't required to report disappearances to international databases or even families immediately. The Bradleys began advocating for legislative changes. But were these gaps just policy flaws, or did they help someone hide the truth about Amy? One of the most haunting alleged sightings came from 2005. A U.S. Navy officer claimed he saw a woman in a Caribbean brothel. She said her name was Amy Bradley and begged him for help. Before he could act, two men reportedly pulled her away. The officer said he didn't report it until returning home, fearing jurisdictional issues or safety. Was this the last real glimpse of Amy, or another dead end in a sea of speculation? A few years after the disappearance, Amy's brother Brad recalled something chilling. He had once received an anonymous email claiming Amy was alive. The sender shared details only the family would know, but the message was cryptic and ended abruptly. Brad never responded. The email account disappeared within hours. Did he miss a once-in-a-lifetime chance, or avoid walking into a trap? The questions kept piling up. The answers never came. In a final plea, the Bradleys shared a photo with authorities. It was a blurry image from a 2004 Caribbean website, showing a woman on a beach chair with intense, searching eyes. They believed it was Amy. For years they kept that print on their fridge, even as experts dismissed it as inconclusive. What if that photo was her last silent scream for help, buried under disbelief? Sometimes truth hides in plain sight. Years have passed, but Amy's name resurfaces regularly in news, forums, and family-led campaigns. Her disappearance isn't just a mystery. It's a reflection of how a young woman can vanish in plain sight, even on a luxury cruise surrounded by cameras, crew, and guests. It haunts families who travel. It haunts those who've trusted cruise lines. It haunts anyone who's ever said goodbye, assuming it wasn't their last. Even now, with more advanced technology and international attention, Amy's trail has never been fully recovered. So why haven't the answers come forward? As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the FBI's efforts to locate Amy began to show cracks. Early momentum faded, with agents facing a harsh reality. They had no solid evidence, no definitive witness, and no jurisdiction in the open sea. The agency had joined the case just days after the Royal Caribbean returned to port. But by then, crucial surveillance footage had already been overwritten. The ship's delay in reporting the incident had cost them precious time. Even more puzzling was the cruise line's resistance. Some testimonies went missing, some staff became suddenly unavailable, and key logs were vague at best. Then came the real blow. Investigators requested to revisit the ship, hoping to search cabin 2040, the last place Amy was seen. But the ship had already sailed its next voyage. Why did it feel like someone didn't want Amy to be found? That chilling question lingered in her parents' minds for years. Among the last confirmed sightings of Amy on the ship was a man named Yellow, a band member from Blue Orchid who'd performed that night. Witnesses claimed to have seen Amy dancing with him. He was reportedly wearing a white shirt and had been unusually familiar with her. Later that same night, someone matching his description was spotted leaving the club with Amy and walking toward the deck. When questioned, Yellow insisted he had returned to his cabin early and denied any extended interaction. But what Amy's parents found concerning was that he had given inconsistent accounts to multiple people. More eerily, a woman told Iva Bradley she had seen Amy walking with a man in a white shirt at dawn, just hours before she vanished. Why did this man's name keep surfacing, yet no charges were ever brought against him? Despite suspicions, nothing tied him directly to Amy's disappearance. In 2005, a naval officer on temporary assignment in Curaçao made a shocking statement. He claimed that, during a visit to a local brothel, a young woman approached him in distress. She said her name was Amy Bradley and begged for help. The officer was rattled. She was escorted away by apparent handlers before he could respond. He waited 2 years to report the incident, fearing backlash from his chain of command. By the time authorities investigated the brothel, it had been burned down, literally gone without a trace. Still, this report added painful weight to an already heavy theory that Amy had been kidnapped and trafficked. Her parents, Ron and Iva, felt both horror and hope. If true, it meant she might still be alive. But each time they reached a potential lead, it vanished just like Amy had. Was this woman truly Amy? Or another dead end cloaked in tragedy? When authorities finally acted on the Navy officer's tip, hopes ran high. Curaçao officials, alongside U.S. investigators, traced the location to a well-known but secretive brothel, one often whispered about but rarely touched by law enforcement. The officer's description of the woman had been hauntingly precise. Green eyes, a Caribbean-style tattoo on her ankle, and a look of sheer desperation. But by the time they got there, the building had been reduced to ashes. Locals claimed a fire had broken out days prior. Accidental, they said. Yet whispers suggested something more sinister. Surveillance footage? Gone. Employee records? Non-existent. It was as if the place had been wiped from the map. Why would a brothel burn down days after such a specific report? To Amy's parents, the answer was all too obvious. Someone was watching. Someone was cleaning up. The case that had already been buried in silence now carried smoke, literal and symbolic. Amy might have been there. She might have spoken, and she might still be alive. But once again, the trail dissolved into nothing. Years after Amy's disappearance, her parents received an email that sent chills down their spine. It was short, vague, and untraceable, but it mentioned Amy by name. The writer claimed to have seen a woman matching Amy's description in Barbados. It also included one name, Jazz. The message suggested Amy was being held by a man of that name and hinted at ongoing abuse and manipulation. Investigators tried to trace the email, but it came from a public internet cafe. No cameras, no trail, just a ghost of a lead. And the cruel possibility that Amy had reached out herself. Was Jazz real? Was he her captor? Or was someone playing with a grieving family? What tore at the Bradleys the most was that nothing could be verified. And yet, the email contained details that had never been made public. Specifics about Amy's tattoo and the last outfit she wore. This lead, like so many others, dangled just out of reach. And still, her parents refused to give up. In desperation, Amy's family hired a private investigator to dig deeper than official channels could go. He was known for uncovering international trafficking routes and had worked cases across Latin America and the Caribbean. After months of silent work, he returned with a file. Inside were sketches, eyewitness accounts, and reports of a foreign woman being seen with armed men on secluded parts of Curaçao. The woman matched Amy's build, mannerisms, even her voice, according to one local. But most troubling was a sketch of a compound, tall walls, barbed wire, armed guards, a place people entered but never seemed to leave. The investigator warned them, pursuing this route could be dangerous. It was a world run on silence and fear. Was this the prison Amy had been hidden in all these years? The family now had more than suspicion. They had an address. But what would they do with it? With the sketch in hand and an unverified location circled on a map, the Bradley family faced a brutal choice. Should they alert the FBI once again and risk another dead end? Or should they go private, quietly fund an off-the-books investigation into what could be an illegal trafficking compound? Ron and Iva Bradley had always played by the rules. But now, the rules had failed them. More than once. They met with the private investigator in secret. Plans were drawn. Funds were quietly raised. A small independent team was dispatched to Curaçao. Surveillance only. No contact, no confrontation. Just watch and report. But what they found there shocked even the hardened investigators. Men with radios, vehicles with covered windows, women who came and went with blank stares and hunched shoulders. It looked like more than a coincidence. But still, no Amy. The team couldn't get close enough. They needed more time, more resources. And then, silence. Their last report never came. Days turned into weeks. The Bradley family waited anxiously for updates. The last message from the investigation team had said, "We're getting close. Something's happening." And then, nothing. Calls went unanswered. Emails bounced back. The team had seemingly vanished. One member's contact in Aruba finally responded, off the record. He claimed the compound had been emptied 2 days after surveillance was spotted. Whoever ran it had powerful eyes. They saw everything. Had the Bradleys' last chance slipped away right in front of them? The investigator resurfaced weeks later, shaken and refusing to speak further. Whatever he'd uncovered, he wasn't willing to share. The risk was too high. Lives were at stake. Ron and Iva were left with more questions and one unbearable truth. They might have been close, closer than ever before. And now that door had closed, maybe forever. Years passed. News cycles changed. Cruise ships came and went. But the Bradleys never stopped. Amy's face remained on missing posters. Her case stayed active with Interpol. Her parents continued to speak at trafficking awareness events, hoping someone, anyone, would remember something, and they were not alone. Thousands of families across the globe clung to hope like a lifeline. Their pain never truly recognized, their daughters' names fading in silence. But Amy's story struck a nerve. It always did. People remembered her vibrant smile, the carefree photos on deck, the chilling last sightings. She was a face people could not forget, and a name the sea refused to give back. In their quiet home in Virginia, Ron and Iva kept her room just as it was, not as a shrine, but as a message. Amy was not gone. She was waiting to be found. Today, the truth about Amy Bradley remains a haunting puzzle. There is no closure, no final chapter, only fragments of what could have been. From the cruise ship's lax security to the whispered sightings, to the burned brothel and the vanishing investigators, every part of her case leads somewhere and nowhere. And that is what makes it so unforgettable. Amy's disappearance is not just a personal tragedy. It's a symbol of every case that vanishes beneath the surface, every girl taken in silence, every question never answered. As of now, no one has been held accountable, no body has been found, no final proof has emerged. But her story continues, not because of the facts alone, but because of the people who refused to let her be forgotten. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and until the truth is found, Amy Bradley remains everyone's unfinished story. Her parents, Ron and Iva, once said, "We still hope. As long as Amy hasn't been found, there's a chance." This hope is what fuels the case to remain alive in public memory. Each new cruise ship safety law, each Reddit thread, each investigative podcast keeps her story flickering like a flame in the dark. And though Amy's exact fate is still unknown, one truth has emerged stronger than any clue. Silence cannot bury a story this deep. The world may never know exactly what happened aboard that ship, but the fight to uncover the truth? That's far from over. Amy Bradley's story is not just about a girl who disappeared. It's about the questions we never stop asking, the voices we refuse to let fade into history. Maybe one day the truth will surface. Until then, we remember Amy, not just for how she vanished, but for how her story still speaks to us all. Amy Bradley's story remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in true crime history. This Caribbean mystery disappearance continues to baffle investigators decades later, making it a cold case that refuses to fade away. The Amy Bradley case represents more than just another missing person story. It's a chilling reminder of how someone can vanish without a trace, even in the most public settings. Her unexplained disappearance has sparked countless theories about human trafficking cases and cruise ship mysteries that still terrify travelers today. While the Amy Bradley FBI investigation may have stalled, her family's relentless search and the ongoing public interest in this unsolved disappearance keep hope alive. This true crime mystery serves as a stark warning about the dangers that can lurk beneath the surface of what should be safe environments. Until answers emerge, Amy Bradley's disappearance will continue to haunt us all as one of the most compelling missing persons cases of our time.